All right, welcome back, Aspire to Lead listeners. I'm so excited for our guest today. It's someone who's residing in the space that I was in for over 15 years, and it was great to connect with him, learn more about his journey, all the wonderful things he's doing. He's been in so many different roles. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but then also I wanted to show off his wonderful and brilliant book. It's 6 Steps to a Strong School Culture, and I know everyone's going to learn quite a bit from this conversation. Dr. Samuel Nix, thank you so much for joining me on Aspire to Lead.
First, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, not just because I'm with you, but with your amazing listeners, your followers. You have a following of individuals who are hungry to learn, to grow, to get better. So it is an absolute honor to be here with you. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. Like I said, I've been looking at my calendar. I had it circled. I can't wait to jump on with Sam today. So will you just share a little bit for our audience to get to know you better about your educational leadership journey?
Absolutely. You know, I started off as a U.S. history teacher and a coach, coaching everything, football, basketball, all that stuff. Went on to be an assistant principal at a middle school, went on to be a principal of a middle school in a very large district here in Texas, and then went on to be a high school principal. Very fortunate enough to have experienced a school with extensive challenges, whether that be instructional challenges, behavior challenges. As a middle school principal, my school was the second lowest performing school in the district of about 60,000 students. And within a year or two, we were one of the top 10 in the district. And then at the high school, my school was named actually on CNN for the gang fights. And it was called Agtown Fights is what the actual title was. Anytime you make it to CNN for for violence and fights, it's not a good thing. It's not a situation you want to run into, right? And in about 4 years, we were named as one of the top 30 schools in America for closing the achievement gaps. And so just really excited about the opportunity we've had. And then for the past several years, I've had the opportunity to serve as a chief of schools where I have the privilege of supporting and hiring principals. And I now serve as the chief academic officer for school district here in Central Texas. And it's just been a pleasure to continue to learn, continue to grow, to continue to support, inspire. That's what we're here to do, much like your podcast, aspire to lead, right? Just to help people be the best they can be as I continue to learn to be the best I can be.
Well, this book shows it. I was going through it and I kept thinking, man, I wish I had this when I first started becoming an administrator. It's literally like a playbook for me to go through, and you've got activity sheets, you got the whole, and it is, a plethora of information. It's not a small book. So I'm curious just where the vision came from. Is this purely from, your step-by-step as a leader and saying, hey, I just want to, the people, I want to give them some guidance. And I'm just want to know kind of the behind the curtain, if you will, about this beautiful book.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for asking. I think one of the biggest challenges that I think leaders might have is one of the biggest challenges is when you are able to do something at a degree that maybe other people struggle with. And you have to be careful because it's not egotistic. But for example, you, Josh, you're a great teacher. And if you're not careful, you'll take for granted that you're a great teacher and think everybody's a great teacher. And why can't everybody just do what I'm able to do? And it's not that you didn't study, and it's not that you didn't apply yourself, and it's not that you didn't do the things that you needed to do to become a great teacher, a great leader, but you are a great leader, and you are a great teacher, and you are a great educator. One of the most difficult things in leadership is transferability. How do I help the next person do what I was able to do or am able to do, or that we do together? And so the precipice for this book really came when I became a principal supervisor, because I saw how to help. I knew how to help, and not that my help was perfect and not that I had all of the answers, but definitely saw that there were some ways to support that could ease the process of success. And so that's really was the precipice for really garnering the thoughts, the experiences, the research behind how to help others really exceed at a level beyond what they were succeeding, as we calibrated and collaborated on making sure students were successful.
Yeah, and there's a plethora of research in there, which I absolutely love. I'm not to say that I geeked out, but I kind of did, Sam, because you have the research behind what you're talking about, which just gives it a little more oomph to the point. And sometimes people have I feel or I think this was my experience, but for you, you had both the stories, but also the research to back it, which made it so much more strong. Talk about real quick just the emphasis that you had in the book in regards to the importance of focusing on impact rather than activity. I want to know kind of your thought process with that and why you think that mind shift is so important for our leaders.
Josh, that's such a great question, because I see it as a pervasive problem, especially in education. I have looked at, Josh, I'm going to say this number, and I hope that you don't think I'm exaggerating. I've looked at thousands of resumes, whether they be teachers' resumes, assistant principals, whatever the case may be. And majority of resumes focus on activity. A part of this committee, a part of this club, I did this, I attended these professional, whatever the case may be. We are very focused on the activities of our lives, the things that we're a part of, the things that we engage in. And where I see that there may be a gap is translating that activity to what was the impact of that thing. I was a part of a committee, and as a result, we were able to reduce or increase or whatever the impact was. In leadership, I see the same trend. We get so caught up in doing the thing that we often lose sight of the impact of the thing. And as a result, we keep doing the thing, even if the thing is not giving us the result that we desire. And so developing a plan, developing a system, developing a way to monitor and measure where we are, how we're doing what we're doing. Are we on track with our key performance indicators for our goals? All of those things play a part in understanding impact. And so I find that majority of the time, we are so activity focused that, Josh, I'm going to say this and it may sound crude. Sometimes we don't even know how to measure impact because we get so focused on busyness, activity, and actually, Josh, it's a badge of honor. We've all seen the teacher who gets there early, who leaves late, the leader who works so hard and never sleeps, and that's the leader, right? That guy never stops, right? But what are they doing, right? And are they working that hard, having the desired impact, or are they working that hard, getting tired? And I just got to a point where I really want to support leaders doing the right work, doing the work that's going to have the greatest degree of impact, not necessarily the tired work that's not having the desired impact.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you're modeling that to your staff too. If you're using that as a badge of honor, oh, I work so hard, I'm going to work crazy hours, never see my family, not take care of myself. I mean, you're also then creating a culture for everyone else to see and try to model that also, or try to follow in those footsteps. And that's not healthy for anyone. Obviously, the busyness piece, not being effective or efficient as a leader, for sure is a pitfall. I'm curious, what are some other common pitfalls that you've seen within our realm of leadership, and how can we avoid those things?
When we're talking about pitfalls, one of the major pitfalls that I see is one of the reasons it's really the major tenet of the book. And that is, I've been in a lot of leadership trainings. I've taken a lot of leadership classes. I've earned a doctorate in leadership. um, all of these things, and it astounds me how very few courses and trainings and developments there are in teaching leaders how to think. And what I see as one of the biggest pitfalls is that leaders too often try to fix adaptive challenges with technical solutions. And so when we start talking about um, thinking about a system, thinking about managing and supporting people, understanding people, inspiring and navigating and people, it's innate to some, but to others, there's a gap there because the critical thinking that it takes to understand how to navigate through all that is not something that has been taught in such a way that it is resonated and it's pervasive.
All right, let's talk about more about the book. You obviously have a leadership cycle that's constructed here, and I'd love for you to explain how it helps our leaders be more intentional and systematic. And maybe this will also help with the pitfall that you were just talking about.
You know, I like to say this every time I talk about this because the research, what inspired me with this was pilots.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book, I talk about the aeronautical decision making, and any pilot that you talk to, they're familiar with this process, right? And the reason this is so important to me, Josh, is because you're the most vulnerable you can be, right, is when you're somewhere you're not supposed to be, right?
Oh, for
And so
sure.
when you're on an airplane, 30,000 foot in the air, right, that that's foreign, right? If something goes wrong, we're not supposed to be there, right? So what happens with pilots is pilots are in a situation where they cannot control certain factors. They can't control turbulence. They can't control weather. They can't control wind. They can't control birds flying into the air. They can't control these things. Yet they're charged with ensuring the safety of everyone that's on that plane. And what's astounding to me is they came up with this aeronautical decision-making metric, if you will. And just by training pilots how to think more intentionally, more strategically, more effectively, there was a 48.2% reduction in human accidents, human performance errors, I'm sorry, and a 72.3% performance reduction in accidents related to weather. So I want to say that again, 72% reduction in accidents related to weather, but you can't control weather, but you can't control lightning, but you can't control. So how in the world is just teaching these pilots how to think more strategically, more intentionally? How does that help reduce something that they have no control over? Using that same premise and that same research, we created the leadership cycle as a strategic framework of thinking to help leaders with all of the things that are not in their control, but be able to think through, to be able to plan for, to be able to be proactive about, so that they can have a greater degree of outcome when it comes to success, whether it's with their organization, their staff, their students, their personal goals. That's the premise of the leadership cycle that's mentioned in the book.
All right, so for our leaders, how do we take that and start to implement that? Especially for those who are feeling overwhelmed by just the day-to-day responsibilities, the business that you were talking about earlier, and taking what these pilots did and actually implement it into their own lives to help with that whole systematic improvement.
Well, that's a great question. And the reality is, what I tell leaders all the time, everything that you need to be successful, you already have.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is slowing down to do things with quality. And Josh, as you well know, we're a society now where we do everything so quick.
Yeah.
And we are so focused on quantity. I'll substitute quantity with action, that we don't just pause for a second to ensure the quality of the things that we're doing. I'll substitute that for impact. So how do we do that? The book takes us through 6 steps to the leadership cycle. The first step in the leadership cycle is clarifying the mission. And so for those who are feeling overwhelmed, for those who are feeling like, Nick, that sounds good, but I'm good and what I'm doing is good and I'm fine, right? The challenge with that is that we can always improve. We can always get better. There's something that we can always learn from. And what I find is that most of the time we experience issues in our organization or issues in our outcomes or our goals, whatever it case may be, because we have felt as though we've been clear about what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish it. Yet it's not clear to those who are supposed to execute the mission. And so I ask leaders all the time, how do you know that you've clarified? And they say, well, I told them. Well, how do you know that you clarified? Well, I emailed them. Well, how do you know that you clarified? Well, I reminded them. I said, all of those are ways that you communicated. Those are not ways that you ensured that they were clear. And so the book helps and talks through strategies of how to ensure clarity. And although that may seem minute, Josh, it is such a big deal, because we take the leaders through this analysis and we find the majority of leaders who believe that they're being clear don't take the time to ensure clarity of the people that they're communicating with. And I heard the quote said, the most drastic thing about communication is thinking that it actually took place. So that's the first step in the leadership cycle. The second step in the leadership cycle is strategic planning and decision making. And what we do is we go through the book and really take the reader through what is the difference between strategic planning and planning, and how do you make decisions that are in the best interest of your goal, the organization, and children. And who do you include in that, and what does that look like? The third step in the leadership cycle is empowering yourself and others. And we just take a very step-by-step process of helping people understand what it looks like and what it means to empower yourself and to empower others. And what are the pitfalls when you're trying to empower others? And what are some of the assumptions when doing that? The next step in the leadership cycle is monitoring and measuring and feedback. And so when do you measure? What do you measure? One of the biggest challenges for leaders, Josh, that we find is not providing feedback. Nothing improves without feedback. Nothing. Nothing gets better without feedback. And we oftentimes do things without providing quality or consistent or timely feedback in order for things to grow, to develop, and to get better, whether that's organizations or people or systems or whatever the case may be. So the book really just walks the leader through how to do that, examples of that, and strategies to do that. And then, of course, the fifth step in the leadership cycle is making the adjustments and improving based on that feedback and those measurements. And of course, the last step is accountability and rewards. And so just step by step, walking a leader through how to think through each of those steps strategically and intentionally puts the leader in such a better position to experience success than just focusing on experience or feelings, as you said at the beginning, or, hey, I've done this and this has always worked, so this is going to work for me. Much like the pilot, so much of leadership is out of your control. But if we think critically, strategically about how we approach situations, people, organizations, systems, our probability of success rises greatly. So that really is what the leadership cycle is about, why it's in place, and how it helps leaders to think more critically and intentionally about the work.
I want to go back to what you had talked about as a principal. Obviously, you took a school, you found your baseline, and you said, we can do better, and you saw drastic improvement. I'm curious, now that you're where you're at now in your leadership journey and you're doing some reflection, what were some keys that you put in place to make sure that that culture shifted and everyone started to rise to the potential that you saw in them?
Number one is being intentional with everything we did. And I'm going to give you an example of this. I take a lot of flack for this because as an educator, as someone who loves education, it hurts me to say this. But this is what I have found to be very evident in too many places. Schools are supposed to be institutions of learning, but we do very little focus on learning. So let me prove this to you. When I would hire teachers, I would tell them this. I would say, I'm not hiring you to teach. They would look at me and they, what are you talking about? I'm not hiring you to teach. I've got news for you. Kids don't like math and kids don't want to come to math class. I'm hiring you to ensure that students learn. And that is different than you focusing on your teaching as opposed to focusing on student learning. We have a building where we're going to focus on learning. And although that may sound like I'm being critical or sound like I'm being funny, Josh, you'd be surprised. Because even with principals who go in to do walkthroughs with teachers, if indeed that happens, to support them, very little feedback, focuses on teaching. We give students homework, and even the feedback that we give to students on their homework, it's -5, grade is a 75. That doesn't help them learn. So in every area, the question that I had as a principal and still have is, what's the focus on learning? What is the impact on learning? Everything that we do in a school, my question is, and what's the impact on the student learning? Now, I'm going to tell you to the degree that we got. Very few questions that I asked teachers or very few conversations I had with teachers where the end of that conversation wasn't, and what's the impact going to be on learning? Now, Josh, I know that sounds funny. I know it does. But I want you to think about when you ask a student, any student, what they learned today. They're not going to tell you what they learned. They're going to tell you what they did.
Yep.
And it's pervasive, and it's the culture. So how do we shift a culture? We shift the mindset. How do we shift the mindset? We're consistent. How are we consistent? We're intentional about what we're focused on, how we're focused on it. And everything has to tie back to student learning. The book talks about how to do that as a leader, why it's important as a leader. And I know I'm talking and the funny thing is the cognitive dissonance that occurs sometimes with leaders, and of course, everything I do is focused on learning, everything I do. And then we go through the analysis and we look at it and come to find out just how often we're focused on everything except student learning.
No, I think you talked about communication before, and being intentional with just even definitions of words. And we have so many staff members where we just assume as a leader, like everyone has this defined the same way. So when I use this word, we're all on the same page. And then when you come to start digging into it and actually understanding what people believe, that term is very different for very different people. Even what you're talking about, we're here for learning. What does that look like? And going through with your staff, well, tell me, what does that look like for you? And having that lens to make sure that we're all on the same page. It sounds simple, but it's not. To get everybody going in one direction with the same vision, with the same definitions, the same communication moving forward. And I just love what you're talking about, not only with the 6 steps, but what you talked about there, just with having that same mind frame for everybody in the building, going down from the people that we're trying to bring in to our staff as our teachers in the interview process to, our veterans who have been here for a very long time to understand that this is the direction we're going. And that is the true goal, right? Is to get everyone to learn and to grow.
Josh, not only is what you're saying so important, the challenge, though, going back to the beginning of our conversation, is how. Leaders want to. Leaders think that they are. Leaders have a desire. The challenge is the gap between their desire and the practical knowledge of how to get it done. And that's what this book helps to do. Bridge the gap between How do I develop a culture that's focused on student learning versus I think I'm doing it, yet the results aren't showing me that? Bridging that gap with the strategies, with the rubrics, with the activities, with the stories, with everything that a leader needs to be able to turn that theory into reality.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. Again, the book, I'm going to show it for those who are watching on YouTube. 6 Steps to Strong School Culture, a Leadership Cycle for Educational Success. Brilliant, brilliant resource. I hope everyone grabs a copy. I'm going to have the link in the show notes for folks to pick up. But I want to talk about another project, Sam, that you've built via YouTube. And I'm going to put on the screen for those who are watching your YouTube channel. So will you just share a little bit about this new project?
Yes, thank you so much. YouTube is such a phenomenal, I'm late to the game, Josh. I'm late to the game, but it is such a phenomenal tool to be able just to share. And that's our goal. That's your goal. That's my goal, is to help. We want to serve. My goal is just to provide resources and information to help those leaders that are hungry, that have a desire, that have a passion to get better, to be better, as I strive to get better and to be better, as you strive to get better and to be better, as we sharpen each other. So the goal of my channel is simple: help leaders be better leaders. Help leaders achieve their goals. Help leaders through my experience, through my wisdom, through my continual growth with what I've learned, share that with the next person so that we can continue to have an impact on all children. Josh, I'm an advocate for children in Texas. I'm an advocate for children in Colorado. I'm an advocate for children in New York. I want children to be successful. As a result, adults need to be successful. So that's the purpose of the YouTube channel. And thank you so much for sharing that information with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. As soon as we get off this conversation, I'm going to go and subscribe myself. So lead through it to succeed. It's the number 2, but I will have that link also in the show notes and on joshnamber.com for folks to click on that. Make sure you're going through, not only watching, giving a like and a subscribe to this wonderful leader. And I want to pick your brain some more, Sam, as far as our new aspiring leaders or our current leaders. If there's something they could do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
They need to buy the book, 6 Steps to a Strong School Culture.
Amen to that.
No, what I would say to any aspiring leader, and as you said, what's the next thing that I can do tomorrow? This is going to sound so simplistic, but it's the best advice that I can give them, Josh. They need to make a decision. In life, we are a culmination of all of our decisions. You are who you are and where you are because of all of the decisions of your yesterday. And so the first thing that they're going to have to do is make a decision. They're going to have to make a decision that they want to be better, make a decision that they want to learn, make a decision that they want to achieve. Then, once they make the decision, there's a quote that I like, and it says, "Success is not the result of luck or chance. Success is the result of habits." So if they or whoever wants to do, be, achieve more, we have to make the decision to do so, be resolute about it, and then do one thing one day at a time that is in alignment with that goal, that vision, that dream, that whatever it is. And so it's not so much the telling them what to do, but it is identifying who they want to become and then being very intentional each day at doing one thing, just one thing that is in alignment with reaching that goal. That's the advice that I would have for any aspiring leader, any aspiring person trying to reach any goal, along with myself. It's number 1, decide to become the person to do the thing. And then number 2, develop the habits that are in alignment with reaching that goal.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, we're not talking about the things out of our control like luck and all those other things that you were talking about, but those consistent habits are so important. So yeah, that's beautiful advice for everyone. Make sure that you're tapping into that. But also I want you to tap into Sam on his website and his social media platform. So Sam, will you just share out how people can connect with you?
Thank you so much. Absolutely. So my website is www. You forgot s63consulting.com. Thank you. And you can reach me on Twitter. Twitter is really where I am most of the time. It's just my name at Samuel Nix on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook at my name as well. And then, of course, YouTube, my YouTube, Lead Through It to Succeed. And so those are just ways to reach. It'd be my pleasure to support in any way. I'm an advocate for leaders. I'm an advocate for children. I'm an advocate for education. So whatever I can do to support, whatever I can do to inspire and motivate, it's my pleasure. And Josh, I just want to once again thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, for your amazing podcast, and for allowing me to speak to your amazing audience.
Oh my gosh, I was about to say the exact same thing. You are a brilliant mind. I'm so glad that I had an opportunity not only to connect, but have you on the show to share out all the wonderful wisdom, not only from your book, but just from your own experience. And I hope everyone is getting a pen and paper and taking notes, because I really feel like everything that you said today is going to really help in the leadership journeys of everyone that's listening. So I appreciate you not only as far as being an advocate for students, being there to support leaders, but also how you're changing education as a whole and your time today.
Josh, thank you so much.